Your sister's moving in. Don't start any drama, my parents said during family dinner. They didn't ask. They just packed up a truck and arrived unannounced. But when the door opened, it wasn't me standing there. It was a stranger holding. Can you imagine the gut punch of your parents telling you, not asking, that your entitled sister is moving into your sanctuary, the home you fought tooth and nail for? Well, that's exactly what happened to me, Mackenzie. But the look on their faces when they showed up on moving day and a total stranger opened the door? Absolutely priceless. You see, my Seattle apartment isn't just a place, it's my victory trophy. For 3 years, it's been my sanctuary, a hard-won refuge from my controlling parents and my perpetually entitled sister, Brooke. It represents freedom, something I'd chased for so long. Let me back up a bit and paint a clearer picture of my life. I'm 29, and I've been grinding for 5 years at Horizon Creative, finally landing that senior graphic designer position last spring. The promotion came with a decent raise, enough to comfortably cover rent on my 1-bedroom plus office apartment in an older Capitol Hill building. The hardwood floors creak, and the pipes sometimes make concerning noises, but that bay window in the living room? It sold me instantly. I've slowly made this place my own, with second-hand furniture I've upgraded over time, plants that have miraculously survived, and walls decorated with my own designs alongside art from local creators I admire. This apartment, it's more than just a place to sleep. It's a symbol. For years, I lived paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes I had roommates I found on Craigslist. Other times I crashed on my best friend Grace's couch when things got really tight. Ramen for dinner? More nights than I care to admit. The graphic design industry is cutthroat. Breaking in meant taking low-paying jobs and dealing with clients who thought exposure was adequate payment. So each rent check I write now, it feels like a quiet middle finger to everyone who ever said my artsy career would never support me. My social circle is small, but it's solid. Grace has been my ride or die since college. She's an elementary school teacher with boundless energy and absolutely zero filter. We have weekly wine nights where we dissect everything from dating disasters to workplace politics. My coworker, Justin, often joins us with his boyfriend, Ethan. These people? They know the real me. They've seen me at my absolute worst and still choose to hang out. Then there's my family. Specifically, my sister, Brooke. She's 32, but she still acts like she's in college. Growing up, Brooke was the undisputed favorite. My dance recitals? Often missed because Brooke had a cold or needed help with homework. My 10th birthday party was canceled because Brooke, then 13, had gotten detention and Mom and Dad were too stressed to handle a house full of kids. Meanwhile, Brooke's 13th birthday featured a professional DJ and catering. This pattern just continued into adulthood. Brooke has never held a job longer than 8 months. Her resume reads like a tour of the city's retail and restaurant scene. She's always quitting because a manager had it out for her or the environment was toxic. Yet somehow, she always has the latest iPhone and designer clothes. Her relationship history follows a similar pattern. Her latest boyfriend, Troy, lasted almost a year, a record for Brooke. He seemed like a decent guy, stable job in construction management. I wasn't surprised when she called me, crying, that they'd broken up. According to her, he was controlling because he suggested they create a budget together. The real issue is that my parents enable all of this. When Brooke needs money for rent, which is often, they transfer it without question. When she gets fired, it's always the employer's fault. My parents, Richard and Karen, raised us in a comfortable suburban home about an hour outside the city. Dad works in insurance and Mom is a part-time school administrator. They're not wealthy, but they're stable, something they achieved through careful financial planning. Ironically enough, their parenting style could be described as traditional, with a heavy side of manipulation. Family loyalty is paramount, and disagreement is seen as disrespect. Mom specializes in guilt trips that would impress a travel agent. "We just want what's best for you" really means we know better than you do. Dad prefers the direct approach, stating his opinion as fact and expecting compliance. Challenging him usually results in him shutting down the conversation entirely. This brings me to that fateful family dinner 3 weeks ago. I try to have dinner with my parents twice a month, partly out of a genuine desire to maintain a relationship, and partly to manage the guilt that builds up if I go too long without seeing them. This particular Sunday, Mom had made pot roast, my favorite, which should have been my first clue something was up. The meal went smoothly enough, with the usual inquiries about my job and those not-so-subtle questions about my dating life. Then came dessert, homemade apple pie with vanilla ice cream. As Mom served it, Dad cleared his throat in that way that signals an announcement is coming. "Mackenzie," he began, his tone immediately putting me on edge. "We need to discuss something important." "What's up?" I asked, trying to sound casual while mentally calculating when I'd last called or visited, wondering if I'd forgotten some family obligation. "It's about your sister," Mom interjected, placing a hand on Dad's arm. "She's going through a rough patch. Troy broke up with her," Dad continued, his voice carrying a note of annoyance that suggested he thought Troy was the one making a mistake. "Kicked her out of their apartment." I wasn't surprised, just sad for Brooke. "Oh, that's tough. Is she staying with you guys for now?" The look they exchanged made my stomach drop. "Well, that's what we wanted to talk about," Mom said, her voice taking on that sugary quality that meant I wasn't going to like what came next. "Your sister's moving in with you." I nearly choked on my pie. "What?" "Your sister's moving in. Don't make a fuss," Dad said firmly. "She needs a place to stay, and you have that extra room you use as an office." It makes perfect sense. It didn't make any sense at all. They hadn't asked. They were telling me, as if my apartment, which I paid for with my own money, was somehow community property. "Did Brooke ask about this?" I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. "She's embarrassed," Mom explained. "You know how proud she is. But she needs family right now." "I can't just, it's already decided," Dad interrupted. "The truck is packed. She'll move in this Saturday." And just like that, my sanctuary was being invaded, my boundaries trampled, and my opinion deemed irrelevant. All in the space of a 5-minute conversation over apple pie. My fork clattered against the dessert plate as I set it down. Appetite gone. "Wait a second. You can't just decide this without talking to me first." Dad's eyebrows rose in that way that had intimidated me since childhood. "We're talking now." "No, you're telling me after you've already made the decision," I countered, feeling heat rise to my face. "My apartment is tiny. It's a 1-bedroom with a small office, not a 2-bedroom. You have that little office space," Mom pointed out, as if I might have forgotten my own floor plan. "Brooke doesn't need much room. She can make it work." "That's my workspace," I explained, trying to keep frustration from seeping into my voice. "I work from home 2 days a week. All my supplies are there, my drawing tablet, my reference books. You can move that stuff into your bedroom," Dad dismissed with a wave of his hand. "Plenty of people work from their bedrooms." I took a deep breath, trying another angle. "Having another person will increase all my expenses, utilities, internet, groceries. I just got this promotion, but Seattle isn't cheap." "Brooke will contribute," Mom assured me, though her lack of eye contact told me even she didn't believe this, "once she gets back on her feet." "And when will that be?" I pressed. "How long is this arrangement supposed to last?" Another exchange of glances between my parents. "Well, we can't put an exact timeline on it," Mom hedged. "Until she's stable again," I said, the last word coming out sharper than I intended, which could be weeks, months, years. "That's what family does, Mackenzie," Mom said, her voice taking on that martyr tone I knew so well. "We help each other without counting the cost or watching the clock. I would think you'd want to be there for your sister during this difficult time." Dad leaned forward, elbows on the table. "This isn't a negotiation. Brooke needs help, and you're in a position to provide it. End of discussion." As if summoned by her name, the front door opened, and Brooke walked in. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her makeup was flawless, as always. She glanced at the table, immediately reading the tension. "You told her," she asked quietly, hovering in the doorway like a Victorian heroine about to faint. "We're discussing it," Mom said, reaching out a hand to draw Brooke to the table. Brooke sat down immediately, reaching for her water glass. "I know this is a lot to ask," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I wouldn't if I had any other option." "What happened with Troy exactly?" I asked, trying to understand the situation better. Brooke's eyes welled with tears. He's been so controlling about money lately, checking all the credit card statements, questioning every purchase. Then he found out about the Nordstrom card and just exploded. Said I had a shopping addiction. She sniffled delicately. Can you believe that? Just because I like nice things. I could believe it. Actually, this wasn't the first time Brooke's spending had caused problems. Last Christmas, she'd asked to borrow my credit card for one small gift and maxed it out on designer boots and a handbag for herself. And your apartment? I asked. It was in his name, she admitted. He gave me 2 weeks to find somewhere else. What about your job at the boutique? Last I'd heard, she was working at an upscale clothing store in the mall. Another tear slipped down her cheek. They let me go. Something about too many tardies, which is so unfair because the bus is always late. The full picture was becoming clearer. This wasn't just a bad breakup. It was Brooke's life imploding on multiple fronts. Again. Honey, Mom interjected. We've already promised Brooke she can stay with you. We would take her in ourselves, but you know, your father's allergies have been acting up, and the spare bedroom is being painted. Dad's mysterious allergies always seemed to flare up when it was convenient. The spare bedroom had been painted for approximately 3 years. I tried staying with Heather, Brooke added, referring to a friend I'd met once or twice, but her boyfriend is there all the time, and they fight constantly. I've already helped her pay off some of her credit card debt, Dad added, as if this contribution absolved him from further responsibility. The rest she'll handle once she's employed again. The walls were closing in. Every objection I raised was met with a counter, every concern dismissed. The decision had been made before I even walked through their door that night. I need to think about this, I finally said, standing up from the table. This is a big change, and I need some time. There's nothing to think about, Dad replied firmly. The truck is rented. We'll be at your place Saturday morning at 9 a.m. I said my goodbyes shortly after, declining offers of leftover pie and additional guilt. The drive home was a blur of frustration and betrayal. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from Brooke. Can't wait to be roomies again, just like when we were kids. Do you think my queen bed will fit in the office? Should I bring my Vitamix, or do you have a good blender? Each message increased my anxiety. Memories of sharing a room with Brooke as teenagers flooded back. My journals read, clothes borrowed without asking and returned stained, my friends monopolized. Now it would be my professional equipment at risk. My carefully cultivated peace disrupted. Instead of going straight home, I pulled into the parking lot of Analog Coffee, a local spot I frequented. I needed to clear my head before returning to the apartment that would soon be invaded. The familiar scent of espresso and the low hum of conversation helped ground me as I ordered a latte. Mackenzie, is that you? I turned to see Grace sitting by the window, grading papers. The universe was throwing me a lifeline. Hey, I said, sliding into the chair across from her. Mind if I join you? Please do. These essays on my summer vacation are melting my brain. She pushed the stack aside. You look like someone killed your cat. What's going on? And so I told her everything, the words tumbling out in a rush of frustration and panic. Grace listened, her expression shifting from surprise to outrage on my behalf. They can't just decide this for you, she said when I finished. It's your apartment, your name on the lease. You know my parents. Then unmake it for them, Grace said firmly. Tell them no. I've tried saying no to my family. It never works. Either they wear me down or I give in to avoid the conflict. And now they've already promised Brooke. I stirred my latte absently. Grace was quiet for a moment, tapping her pen against her mug. Then her eyes lit up in that way that usually preceded either a brilliant idea or a terrible one. What if, she said slowly, the office wasn't available? What do you mean? I can't remodel in 5 days. No, but what if someone else was already using it? She leaned forward. My cousin Tyler just moved to Seattle for a job at Amazon. He's staying in an Airbnb while apartment hunting. What if he became your temporary roommate? I blinked at her. You want me to move a stranger into my apartment to prevent my sister from moving in? Not a total stranger. He's my cousin. I've known him his whole life. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of a guy about our age with dark hair and glasses. He's quiet, clean, works long hours, and is desperate for a more affordable place to stay while he looks for something permanent. It was a crazy idea. Completely inappropriate. Potentially disastrous. Tell me more, I said. Grace's coffee shop suggestions snowballed faster than I could have imagined. By the next evening, I was sitting across from Tyler at a Thai restaurant near my apartment, conducting what felt like the world's most rushed roommate interview. I really appreciate you considering this, Tyler said, pushing his glasses up slightly. The Airbnb prices here are insane, and everything happened so fast with the job offer that I didn't have time to secure housing first. Tyler was tall and lanky with a quiet voice that matched Grace's description of him. He worked as a software developer and had just started at Amazon after relocating from Chicago. Unlike the image of the typical tech bro, he seemed thoughtful and a bit reserved. Grace speaks very highly of you, I said, picking at my pad thai. But I should be upfront. This would be a temporary arrangement. The office is small, and while there's a futon that folds out to a full bed, it's not exactly spacious. That's more than fine, he assured me. I'm planning to find my own place within a couple of months anyway. I just need time to get to know the neighborhoods and save up for the ridiculous deposits around here. We discussed practical matters. Rent. He offered more than I expected. Utilities, kitchen privileges, bathroom scheduling. The more we talked, the more reasonable the idea seemed. Tyler worked long hours and mentioned he often stayed late at the office. He wasn't much of a cook, but was scrupulous about cleaning up after himself. He didn't party, had no pets, and his main hobby was reading science fiction novels. I should also mention, I said, lowering my voice slightly, the real reason I need a roommate quickly is complicated. My sister was supposed to move in this weekend. My parents decided this without asking me, and I'm trying to prevent that from happening. Instead of the judgment I half expected, Tyler nodded understandingly. Grace mentioned something about family pressure. I get it. My mom still tries to plan my life from 1,000 miles away. You don't think it's terrible of me to block my sister? He considered this before answering. I think it's your apartment and your life. Sometimes family doesn't understand boundaries. By the end of dinner, I had a new temporary roommate. Tyler came by the next evening to see the apartment, and by Wednesday, just 3 days after that fateful family dinner, he had moved in his essentials, clothes, laptop, books, and not much else. The office transformation happened quickly. I consolidated my work materials, moving my drawing tablet and most important supplies to a corner of my bedroom. It wasn't ideal, but it was workable for the short term. Tyler helped rearrange the furniture to maximize the small space, and by Wednesday night, the office had become a functional, if compact, bedroom. Meanwhile, my phone continued to buzz with messages from my parents and Brooke. I responded vaguely, neither confirming nor denying Saturday's moving plans. Dad called twice, but I let it go to voicemail, texting later that I was in meetings. I knew I was only delaying the inevitable confrontation, but each day gave Tyler more claim to the space. You'll have to tell them eventually, Grace pointed out during our Thursday wine night, which we'd relocated to her apartment to give Tyler some space. I know, I sighed, refilling our glasses. I'm planning to call them tomorrow night. I just needed to get everything settled first. How's it going with Tyler? Any red flags? I shook my head. Honestly, he's the perfect roommate so far. He makes virtually no noise, cleans up after himself, and even brought home a French press coffee maker for the kitchen as a thank you gift. Told you he was a good egg, Grace said, looking smug. The quiet ones often are. It's weird, though, I admitted. I've spent 3 years creating this perfect solo space. And now, in the span of a week, I've got a roommate. Even if it's to prevent a worse roommate situation. Sometimes the devil you choose is better than the devil thrust upon you, Grace said with mock wisdom. Or in this case, the angel you choose versus the demon sister. Brooke's not a demon, I said automatically, the lifetime habit of defending my sister kicking in despite everything. She's just a lot. A lot of trouble, Grace muttered into her wine glass. Back at my apartment that night, I found Tyler reading on the couch, a cup of tea on the coffee table. He started to get up when I entered. Don't move on my account, I said. There's plenty of room. He settled back down as I kicked off my shoes. How was wine night? Therapeutic, I answered, flopping into the armchair. Grace sends her love, by the way. She texted earlier to make sure I wasn't secretly an axe murderer, he said with a small smile. Apparently, she's having second thoughts about setting you up with a relative stranger. Are you an axe murderer? I mean, not currently, he replied. Too much effort. I prefer my job's slower method of soul destruction. I laughed, surprised by his dry humor. First week at Amazon that bad? Let's just say I understand why they have crying rooms. He marked his place in his book. How about you? Ready for tomorrow's family confrontation? I groaned. Not even slightly. Part of me is tempted to just not be here when they arrive. Would that help in the long run, though? No, I admitted. It would just delay the inevitable and probably make it worse. I chewed my lip thoughtfully. I should call them tonight, give them a heads up. Want me to make myself scarce for that conversation? I considered the offer, then shook my head. No need. I'll take it in my room. But I didn't make the call that night or the next morning. Each time I picked up my phone, I found a reason to put it down again. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment, but in truth, I was avoiding conflict, just as I always had. Friday evening arrived with still no direct communication about the changed situation. Tyler and I were sharing a pizza and watching a documentary when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Don't forget, we'll be there at 9 a.m. tomorrow with Brooke's things. Please make sure the office is cleared out. Love you. I stared at the message, anxiety churning in my stomach. Tyler glanced over, raising an eyebrow. They're still coming tomorrow, I said, showing him the text. I never told them. What are you going to do? I took a deep breath. I guess I'll be having an unexpected family reunion in the morning. Do you want me to be out for that? Tyler asked. I can make myself scarce for a few hours. I considered this, then made a decision that would change everything. Actually, if you don't mind, I'd like you to be here. I straightened my shoulders. In fact, I think you should answer the door. Saturday morning arrived with gray skies and a steady drizzle. Typical Seattle weather that matched my mood perfectly. I'd barely slept, rehearsing conversations in my head and imagining worst-case scenarios. Tyler and I were having coffee at the kitchen counter, an island of calm before the storm. You sure about this? He asked, glancing at the clock. It was 8:45 a.m. No, I admitted, clutching my mug like a lifeline. But I'm out of options in time. We could still call them, he suggested. Give them a heads up. I shook my head. They'll just try to talk me out of it, or worse, show up anyway and demand that you leave immediately. At least this way, they'll be too shocked to have a prepared response. Tyler nodded, adjusting his glasses. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Standing up for yourself isn't wrong, even if it feels uncomfortable. The doorbell rang at 8:52 a.m. Earlier than expected. My heart jumped to my throat. They're early, I whispered unnecessarily, panic rising. Through the window, I could see my parents' silver SUV double-parked in front of the building. Behind it was a small rental truck that presumably contained Brooke's possessions. Tyler sat down his coffee. I can still stay in the room if you'd rather handle this yourself. For a brief moment, I was tempted to take the offer, to fall back into old patterns and handle the conflict alone. But something had shifted in me over the past week. Perhaps it was the realization that I'd found the courage to take control of my space in a different way. Or maybe it was the simple fact of having an ally present. No, I said firmly. Answer the door. Tyler nodded and walked calmly to the entrance while I positioned myself just out of immediate sight in the kitchen. The doorbell rang again, more insistently this time, followed by a knock. I heard the door open and held my breath. Can I help you? Tyler's voice was polite but confused. Exactly as we discussed. There was a moment of complete silence. I think we have the wrong apartment, my father's voice finally said, uncertainty clear in his tone. We're looking for Mackenzie Wilson. This is Mackenzie's apartment, Tyler confirmed. I'm Tyler, her roommate. Another beat of silence, followed by my mother's voice. Roommate? There must be some mistake. We're her parents. This is her sister, Brooke. I could picture the scene perfectly, my father's face reddening, my mother's bewildered expression, Brooke's mouth hanging open in shock. It was time to make my appearance. I stepped around the corner and into view. Hi, Mom. Dad. Brooke. You're early. My father's eyes darted between Tyler and me, confusion morphing rapidly into anger. What's going on here? Who is this man? Before I could answer, my mother pushed past Tyler into the apartment, her gaze immediately falling on his belongings. The stack of books on the coffee table, the laptop on the desk in the corner, the jacket hanging by the door. Mackenzie Jane Wilson, she said, using my full name as if I were still a child. What have you done? Brooke remained in the hallway, her expression shifting from shock to hurt to anger in rapid succession. You got a roommate to keep me out? Her voice rose on the last word, causing the door to apartment 4B to crack open as my neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, peeked out curiously. Can we please take this inside? I said, mortified at the public spectacle. Mrs. Garcia, sorry for the noise. No problem, dear, she replied, clearly not meaning it, and in no hurry to close her door. My father stepped into the apartment, his posture rigid. Young man, he addressed Tyler directly. I don't know what Mackenzie has told you, but there's been a misunderstanding. We need you to leave immediately. Tyler stood his ground, calm but firm. Sir, I've signed a rental agreement with Mackenzie. I live here now. Rental agreement? My father's voice rose. Mackenzie, what is he talking about? Brooke chose this moment to enter the drama fully, dropping dramatically onto the hallway floor. I'm going to be homeless, she wailed. My own sister would rather have a total stranger than help family. A door across the hall opened, and now Mr. Peterson was watching, too. Perfect. Is everything all right out here? Mr. Delgado, our building manager, appeared at the top of the stairs, attracted by the commotion. We've had noise complaints. 5 minutes into this confrontation, and I'd already managed to involve half the building. My father was staring daggers at Tyler. My mother was inspecting the apartment like she was cataloging violations. Brooke was creating a scene in the hallway, and the neighbors were getting a free Saturday morning show. Everything's fine, I said to Mr. Delgado, my voice strained. Family discussion. We're taking it inside now. Please do, he replied firmly, or I'll have to ask your visitors to leave the premises. Everyone inside, I said, gesturing to my family. Now. Reluctantly, they complied. Tyler closed the door, mercifully shutting out the curious neighbors. The small apartment suddenly felt even smaller with 5 people inside it. Sit down, I said, pointing to the couch and armchair. Please. My parents took the couch while Brooke, after a dramatic sniffle, perched on the arm of the couch as far from them as possible. Tyler moved to stand by the kitchen counter, giving us space while remaining present. The moment of truth had arrived. I took a deep breath, unclenching my fists at my sides. The apartment fell silent as everyone waited for an explanation. The only sound was the faint ticking of the wall clock and Brooke's occasional theatrical sniffles. I need everyone to listen to me, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. Really listen, without interrupting. Dad opened his mouth, but Mom placed a hand on his arm, silencing him. I took that as permission to continue. For as long as I can remember, what I want, what I need, has always come second in this family. The words felt dangerous, like stepping onto thin ice, but I pressed on. When we were kids, Brooke's dance recitals were family events, with flowers and dinner celebrations. Mine were attended if it was convenient. My 10th birthday was canceled because Brooke got detention, but her 13th had professional catering and a DJ. That's not fair, Mom started. But I held up my hand. Please, let me finish. She pressed her lips together, clearly unhappy, but complying. This pattern never stopped. In college, when I needed help with tuition, I was told to take out loans because you were helping Brooke with her maxed-out credit cards. When I graduated and was living on ramen to make rent, you were paying Brooke's security deposit on her 3rd apartment in 2 years. I turned to look directly at my sister. Brooke, I love you. You're my sister. But this isn't about not wanting to help you. This is about the fact that once again, Mom and Dad decided what would happen with my life, in my home, without even asking me. Brooke's expression was hard to read, part hurt, part defiance, but also something else, something that looked almost like understanding. I have worked incredibly hard for this apartment, I continued. I saved for months for the security deposit. I painted it myself. I bought furniture piece by piece when I could afford it. This is the first place that has ever been truly mine, and I have the right to decide who lives here. I gestured toward Tyler, who was standing quietly by the counter. This is Tyler. He's Grace's cousin and my new roommate. He moved in 3 days ago. You did this deliberately, Dad said, his voice low with anger. To shut out your sister? Yes, I admitted, refusing to sugarcoat it. I did. Because for once, I decided to prioritize what I needed instead of what everyone else wanted from me. So, you'd rather have a stranger in your home than your own sister? Mom asked, her voice thick with disappointment. He's not, I began. But Tyler stepped forward slightly. If I may, he said politely. I understand this is a family matter and I'm an outsider here, but Mackenzie and I have a legal roommate agreement. I've paid rent and moved my belongings in. I'm happy to give you privacy to discuss this further, but I wanted to make the situation clear. Dad turned his glare on Tyler. And who exactly are you? Where did you come from? How do we know you're not taking advantage of our daughter? Dad, I exclaimed, mortified. It's a fair question, Tyler replied calmly. I'm Tyler Ramirez. I recently moved to Seattle from Chicago for a software development position at Amazon. I'm Grace's cousin. You can call her to verify. I needed temporary housing while I searched for an apartment, and Mackenzie needed a roommate. It was mutually beneficial. Mutually beneficial, Dad repeated sarcastically. While your own sister is left without a place to live. That's cold, Mackenzie. I didn't raise you to be so selfish. The word selfish hit me like a slap. How many times had I heard that when I tried to set even the smallest boundary? When I couldn't babysit Brooke's goldfish because I had a final exam. When I couldn't lend Mom my car because I needed it for work. When I couldn't co-sign Brooke's lease because my own credit was still recovering from student loans. It's not selfish to have boundaries, I said quietly. It's not selfish to expect to be asked rather than told. It's not selfish to want some control over my own living space. We're family, Mom said, as if those 2 words trumped all other considerations. Family helps family. I would have helped, I replied. If you had asked. If you had respected me enough to have a conversation instead of an announcement. If there had been any consideration of what this would mean for my life and work. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Tyler shifted slightly, then spoke again. I think I'll step out for a bit, give you all some privacy to talk. He looked at me. Text me when you'd like me to come back. I nodded gratefully, and he slipped out the door, leaving me alone with my family. The apartment felt both emptier and more pressurized without his calming presence. As soon as the door closed, Brooke stood up. Well, this is just perfect, she said, tears welling in her eyes. My little sister hates me so much she'd rather live with a total stranger. I don't hate you, Brooke, I sighed, suddenly exhausted. This isn't about you. Not really. It sure feels like it's about me, she shot back. Where am I supposed to go now? The truck is rented. All my stuff is packed. You could stay with Mom and Dad, I suggested. Dad's allergies seem to come and go conveniently. Dad's face reddened. Now, wait just a minute. No, she's right, Brooke interrupted, surprising all of us. She turned to our parents. Why exactly can't I stay with you? The spare room has been being painted for what, 3 years now? Mom looked flustered. Well, it's your father's allergies have been particularly bad lately, and that's bullshit, Brooke said flatly. Brooke. Mom gasped. Language. No, I want to know, she pressed, suddenly animated in a way I hadn't seen before. Why push me on to Mackenzie? Why not help me yourselves? Dad and Mom exchanged uncomfortable glances. We thought, Dad began, then stopped. You need to learn independence, Brooke. You're 32 years old. You can't keep bouncing from crisis to crisis, expecting others to catch you. I blinked in surprise. This was not the direction I had expected this conversation to go. So, your solution was to force me on Mackenzie? Brooke asked incredulously. How exactly does that teach me independence? We thought, Mom tried again, you and your sister could support each other. She's always been so responsible, and you could help with rent. The truth dawned on me slowly, then all at once. You weren't trying to help Brooke by sending her to me, I said quietly. You were trying to help yourselves. You're tired of bailing her out, but you feel too guilty to cut her off completely. So, you thought you'd make her my responsibility instead? The silence that followed confirmed my suspicion. For the first time, I saw my parents not as the all-powerful authorities of my childhood, but as flawed, tired people who had run out of solutions. Brooke laughed, a short, bitter sound. Wow. So, nobody actually wanted me. That's just great. She turned away, wiping at her eyes, and I felt a surge of sympathy despite everything. For all her drama and self-centeredness, this had to hurt. I'm going to wait in the car, she said, her voice thick with tears. Figure out what you're doing with my stuff. She walked out, closing the door with surprising gentleness behind her. The three of us remaining sat in uncomfortable silence for a long moment. We were trying to do what's best for everyone, Mom finally said, her voice small. By making decisions for everyone without consulting them, I replied. That's not doing what's best. That's doing what's easiest. Dad sighed heavily, suddenly looking older than his 58 years. We've supported Brooke through 3 evictions, 5 job losses, and more relationship drama than a soap opera. We're exhausted, Mackenzie. We thought maybe if she had your influence, so you volunteered me for the job without asking. I finished for him. Because it's easier to steamroll me than to set boundaries with Brooke. Neither of them denied it. I'm not going to be your solution, I said firmly. I love you both, and I love Brooke, but I won't set myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. Not anymore. Dad stood up abruptly. We should go figure out what to do with the truck and Brooke's things. Mom followed his lead, gathering her purse. This isn't like you, Mackenzie. The daughter I raised would never let her sister struggle. The guilt trip was so predictable, I almost laughed. The daughter you raised is standing right here, Mom. I'm just finally speaking up for myself. They left with minimal goodbyes, the atmosphere thick with disappointment and unresolved tension. As the door closed behind them, I sank onto the couch, emotionally drained, but also experiencing a strange, light feeling I eventually recognized as relief. The confrontation I'd feared for so long had happened, and I was still standing. The apartment was still mine. And for perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had set a boundary with my family and held it. I was about to text Tyler when there was a soft knock at the door. Thinking he might have forgotten his key, I opened it without checking the peephole. Brooke stood there alone, eyes red but dry. Can we talk? She asked quietly. Just us. I hesitated for just a moment before stepping aside to let Brooke in. She entered cautiously, as if she were now a guest rather than the entitled sister who had expected to move in without invitation. Mom and Dad left? I asked, closing the door. She nodded. They're sitting in the car, probably plotting their next move. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Dad's doing that thing where he taps the steering wheel and mutters to himself. I knew exactly what she meant. The familiar gesture our father made when his plans were derailed. Despite everything, I found myself smiling too. Do you want some coffee? I offered, moving toward the kitchen. Tyler bought a French press. Sure, she said, perching on the edge of the couch. He seems nice. Grace's cousin, you said. I busied myself with the coffee preparation, grateful for the distraction. Yeah, he just moved here from Chicago. Works at Amazon. And you just happened to find a roommate the exact week I needed a place to stay. I paused, then decided honesty was the only path forward. I called Grace in a panic after dinner Sunday night. She suggested Tyler as an alternative to you moving in. Brooke nodded slowly, absorbing this. So, you really didn't want me here that badly. I turned to face her. It wasn't about not wanting you, Brooke. It was about not wanting to be told what would happen in my own home. It was about years of feeling like my needs always come second. I poured the coffee and brought 2 mugs to the living room, settling into the armchair across from her. Tyler had texted that he was getting breakfast at the cafe down the street and would be back in an hour, giving us plenty of time to talk. Brooke wrapped her hands around the mug but didn't drink. You know what's weird? When Mom and Dad told me I'd be staying with you, I didn't want to. This surprised me. You didn't. She shook her head. I wanted to say no. I knew your place was small, and we haven't exactly been close lately, but they insisted it was the only option, that you'd be fine with it. She trailed off, staring into her coffee. It was easier to go along with it than to argue. I know that feeling, I said quietly. I'm sure you do. She finally looked up at me. We've both been playing our assigned roles for so long, haven't we? You're the responsible one. I'm the mess. You achieve, I fail. You save, I spend. I'd never heard Brooke speak with such self-awareness before. When did you become so insightful? A small, sad smile. Therapy. For the past 6 months, actually. Troy's idea originally. My shopping, she hesitated. It's not just liking nice things. It's an addiction. I buy things when I'm anxious or sad or empty. The high lasts about 5 minutes. Then the guilt sets in. But by then, I've already spent money I don't have. This was more honesty than Brooke had shown in years. I didn't know you were in therapy. I didn't tell anyone. I was embarrassed. The perpetual screw-up. Finally admitting she screwed up. She took a sip of coffee. I was making progress, too. Had a budget. Was sticking to it, mostly. Then Troy found the Nordstrom card I'd hidden and realized I'd lied about stopping. He said he couldn't trust me anymore. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. That must have been hard. It was. Is. She set down her mug. The truth is, Mackenzie, I'm jealous of you. I always have been. I nearly choked on my coffee. Jealous of me? But you were always the favorite. The favorite screw-up, she corrected. They expected nothing from me and everything from you. And you delivered. Good grades, solid career, financial independence. Meanwhile, I'm 32 and back to square one again. I'd never considered our family dynamic from this perspective before. Had my resentment of being held to higher standards blinded me to the damage done by expecting nothing of Brooke? For what it's worth, I said carefully, I was always jealous of how easily things seemed to come to you. The social stuff, making friends, dating. You were always the fun one, the pretty one. Brooke laughed. God, we're a mess, aren't we? Each envying what the other had, neither of us seeing the whole picture. A comfortable silence fell between us, more honest than any conversation we'd had in years. So, what now? I finally asked. What are you going to do? She sighed. I don't know. I can't stay with Mom and Dad. That would be a disaster for my therapy progress. Most of my friends are partiers who would be terrible influences. What about Heather? You mentioned staying with her before. She and her boyfriend broke up 2 days ago. He moved out, but she can't afford the rent alone. She's looking for a roommate. Brooke looked thoughtful. Actually, I hadn't considered it because Mom and Dad were so set on me staying with you, but maybe that could work. I encouraged. You said you were friends, right? Since college. She's one of the few friends who knows about my therapy and shopping issues. She'd be supportive, not an enabler. I could see the wheels turning in Brooke's mind as a plan began to form. Her place is closer to downtown too, which would be better for job hunting. Speaking of which, I ventured. What kind of job are you looking for? Brooke tucked her hair behind her ear, a gesture I remembered from childhood when she was feeling uncertain. I've been thinking about that a lot, actually. I'm good with people, even if I've been unreliable in the past. My therapist suggested looking into something with more structure, maybe administrative work. I might know someone, I said. One of our clients at Horizon is always looking for front desk staff. The pay isn't amazing, but it's steady, and they're pretty flexible if you're upfront with them. Brooke's eyes widened slightly. You'd recommend me after everything? You're my sister, I said simply. I want to help, just not by having you take over my home without asking. She nodded slowly. I understand that now. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. A text notification pinged on my phone. Tyler asking if it was okay to come back yet. I replied affirmatively, then looked back at Brooke. I think this might be the first real conversation we've had in years, I observed. Probably since before college, she agreed. It's nice. Weird, but nice. The door opened and Tyler entered, carrying a bag from the bakery downstairs. He hesitated when he saw Brooke. Sorry, should I? It's fine, I assured him. Tyler, this is my sister Brooke. Brooke, this is Tyler, the roommate, Brooke said, standing to shake his hand. Sorry about the drama earlier. Tyler accepted her handshake with a polite smile. Family is complicated. I get it. I should go, Brooke said. Mom and Dad are probably wondering what's taking so long, and we need to figure out what to do with all my stuff in the truck. Let me know about Heather, I said, and I'll email my contact at Meridian Publishing on Monday about that position. Thanks, she said, and after a moment's hesitation, stepped forward to give me a quick, awkward hug. For the coffee and everything else. After she left, Tyler set the bakery bag on the counter. That seemed to go better than expected. Surprisingly, yes, I agreed, still processing the shift in our sibling dynamic. We actually talked like adults. And your parents? I sighed. That's going to take longer. They left angry and disappointed. Mom's probably already drafting the guilt trip text messages. True to prediction, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother less than an hour later. I hope you're happy with your decision. Brooke is devastated. Call when you're ready to apologize. I showed it to Tyler, who winced sympathetically. Classic guilt technique. One of her specialties, I agreed, putting the phone away without responding. That would have worked on me a week ago. And now? I considered the question. Now I'm sad they're upset, but I'm not going to apologize for setting a boundary. The next few days established a new pattern. Tyler and I settled into a surprisingly comfortable roommate routine. He was often gone before I woke up and worked late most evenings, but we established a habit of sharing coffee on weekend mornings. He was tidy, respectful of my space, and unexpectedly easy to talk to once his initial reserve faded. Brooke texted to let me know she was moving in with Heather temporarily, and I followed through by connecting her with my contact at Meridian. To my surprise, she landed an interview within days. My parents maintained radio silence, except for a terse group text announcing that Sunday dinner would be postponed until further notice. It hurt, but I recognized the tactic for what it was, an attempt to make me come crawling back, apologizing for my selfishness. Instead of giving in, I used the opportunity to work with my newly found therapist, prompted by seeing how therapy had helped Brooke to examine the family patterns I'd accepted for so long. Our sessions helped me understand that my parents' controlling behavior and my habitual compliance weren't simply personality traits, but a dysfunctional system that had shaped all our relationships. By the third week after the confrontation, Brooke had started her new job at Meridian and reported cautiously positive progress. This structure helps, she texted, having set hours and clear expectations. And I opened a savings account that's harder to access than my checking. Baby steps. It was Grace who finally broke the stalemate with my parents by inviting all of us, including Tyler, to dinner at her apartment. Neutral territory, she explained when I questioned her motives. And I'll be there to referee if needed. To my surprise, my parents accepted, as did Brooke. And somehow, on a rainy Saturday evening a month after the confrontation, we found ourselves seated around Grace's dining table. The atmosphere was tense but civil. "This is delicious, Grace," my mother said, breaking an awkward silence. "Did you make the sauce yourself?" "Tyler did, actually," Grace replied, nudging her cousin with her elbow. "He's the chef in the family." All eyes turned to Tyler, who looked embarrassed by the attention. "It's just marinara, my grandmother's recipe." "It's very good," my father said stiffly, the closest thing to approval he'd shown all evening. The conversation limped along through dinner, carefully avoiding any mention of the conflict, until Brooke, of all people, addressed the elephant in the room. "So, are we going to talk about what happened or just pretend everything's normal while radiating awkwardness?" Mom's fork clattered against her plate. "Brooke, please." "No, she's right," Dad said, surprising all of us. He set down his napkin and looked directly at me. "We owe you an apology, Mackenzie." I nearly dropped my water glass. In 29 years, I could count on one hand the number of times I'd heard my father apologize for anything. "Your mother and I have been doing some thinking," he continued. "And some talking, with a professional." He said the last word as if it tasted strange in his mouth. "You're seeing a therapist?" I couldn't keep the shock from my voice. "Family counselor," Mom clarified quickly. "Just a few sessions. Pastor Jim recommended it." "The point is," Dad pressed on, "we've recognized that we may have been overly directive in our approach." "Controlling," Brooke translated. "The word is controlling, Dad." He frowned, but didn't dispute it. We thought we were doing what was best for both of you, pushing Mackenzie to be responsible, protecting Brooke from consequences. But we can see now that we've done neither of you any favors. We love you both so much, Mom added, her eyes glistening. We never meant to hurt either of you. We know that, I said softly, reaching across the table to touch her hand. But impact matters more than intent sometimes. She nodded, squeezing my hand. We're trying to learn that. It's not easy to change at our age. Tell me about it, Brooke said with a wry smile. I'm having to unlearn 3 decades of bad habits. The tension in the room had eased, replaced by something tentative but hopeful. We weren't fixed, not by a long shot, but we were talking, really talking, perhaps for the first time. As I looked around the table at my sister with her new determination, my parents with their halting attempts at change, Grace with her satisfied smile at seeing her plan work, and Tyler, the catalyst who had unknowingly set this whole transformation in motion, I felt something shift inside me. The anger and resentment that had fueled my stand against my family was mellowing into something more sustainable, a quiet, steady conviction in my own worth and boundaries. We had a long way to go, but for the first time, it felt like we were all walking in the same direction. 3 months after that fateful Saturday, when a stranger opened my door instead of me, my life has transformed in ways I never could have predicted. Tyler, initially a temporary solution to a family crisis, has become a permanent roommate and one of my closest friends. His quiet presence and unwavering respect for boundaries helped me recognize what healthy relationships actually look like. We've settled into a comfortable routine of shared meals, occasional movie nights, and a mutual understanding that sometimes we both just need space. I've even introduced him to some of my coworkers, expanding both our social circles. Brooke has surprised everyone, perhaps herself most of all. After starting at Meridian Publishing, she received her first performance review with no tardiness or absences, a personal record. She and Heather signed a year-long lease on their apartment, and Brooke has maintained her therapy appointments consistently. She still struggles with her shopping impulses, especially during stressful periods, but now she texts me when she feels the urge instead of surrendering to it. Last week, she proudly showed me her savings account balance, modest, but growing steadily. My parents have been the slowest to change, which is understandable. Decades of established patterns don't transform overnight. But they're trying in their way. The family counseling sessions continue, and they've made visible efforts to respect my boundaries. Sunday dinners resumed after a 6-week hiatus, now with new ground rules. No unsolicited advice, no criticism disguised as concern, and most importantly, no decisions made for others. The first dinner was awkward, with Mom visibly biting her tongue several times and Dad retreating into silence when uncomfortable topics arose. But each gathering has gotten progressively easier. Last Sunday, Dad actually asked for my opinion on his retirement investment strategy instead of telling me what I should do with my own finances. A small step that felt monumental. My own healing journey has been more internal, but no less significant. Through therapy, I've begun to recognize how avoiding conflict had become my default mode, even outside my family. I said yes to projects I didn't have time for, accepted blame that wasn't mine, and swallowed my opinions to keep the peace. Learning to stand firm without aggression or apology has transformed not just my family relationships, but my professional life as well. Last month, I negotiated a proper raise instead of accepting the initial offer with gratitude, something the old Mackenzie would never have dared. What I've come to understand is that true family, true connection of any kind, must be built on respect for each other's autonomy. The idea that family means sacrificing your needs for others is a harmful myth that serves no one. My parents thought they were showing love by solving problems for us, but they were actually preventing us from developing the skills to solve our own problems. Brooke thought she was being loved when she was actually being infantilized. And I thought being a good daughter meant compliance, when what my family really needed was my honest voice. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is to let people face the consequences of their choices. It's not cruelty, but respect for their capacity to grow. When I refused to let Brooke move in, it wasn't rejection, but an opportunity for her to find her own solution, which she did. One that has served her better than our parents' plan ever would have. The irony isn't lost on me that my parents' attempt to force their solution actually catalyzed positive change for everyone involved. Their unwelcome truck parked outside my building that rainy Saturday morning didn't deliver what they intended, but it delivered exactly what we all needed, a crisis that forced us to confront patterns too long ignored. I look around my apartment now, still my sanctuary, though differently configured with Tyler's books mingling with mine on the shelves, and feel a peace that comes not from avoiding conflict, but from surviving it. From standing in my truth and discovering that relationships that can't withstand honesty aren't relationships worth preserving in their current form. The journey continues, of course. Old habits resurface, especially in moments of stress. Mom still occasionally slips into guilt trip mode. Dad still struggles to express vulnerability. Brooke still has days when the shopping apps call her name. And I still sometimes find myself swallowing words I should speak. But now we recognize these patterns when they emerge. And that recognition alone is powerful. If you're facing similar struggles with family boundaries, know that standing firm isn't selfish. It's often the most loving choice you can make, both for yourself and for those who need to grow. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with family? How did it change your relationships? Share your experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most healing outcomes. And the most uncomfortable growth leads to the most authentic connections. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and I wish you courage on your own path to healthy boundaries and genuine relationships.